Howdy folks, and welcome back to Pool School. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about DE filters and why you should not have one around your pool. So what do you say we dive right in? Alrighty folks, before we get started, I want to thank you once again for watching this video. I remind you to like it if you do, subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, and please share my channel with everyone you know who owns a pool. Also, don't forget to check out my website, poolschooler.com, again, poolschooler.com, for more exclusive membership content that will help you save even more money servicing your pool yourself. Alrighty, so as I said earlier, this video is on diatomaceous earth, or DE filters, and why you should not have one for your pool. I think that this is going to ruffle some feathers, and I apologize to anyone if this is upsetting to you, but I'm really have to go on record as saying I've never been a fan of DE filters. I think they're messy. I think they're not worth the negatives of having a DE filter are not worth the positives of having a DE filter. So I think the best way to talk about this first is to talk about the pros and cons, and then hopefully you can make a decision on what you think about having a DE filter for your pool. Okay? All right. Alrighty. So honestly, there's only really one pro that I can think of, maybe two, to having a DE filter. And that first one is the prime one, and it actually has changed, and there'll be more on that in a little bit in this video, so stay tuned with it and stay with me. The number one reason most people buy a DE filter is, up until this point, they've been the most efficient types of filter out there, meaning they filter out the smallest particles. They can filter out particles as small as 3 to 5 microns, okay? So compare that to a cartridge filter that filters out particles as small as 10 to 20 microns. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the sand filter with sand as the medium, and they filter out particles as small as 20 to 30 microns. So that's obviously a pretty big difference, but I can tell you this from my own personal experience. To the naked eye, you really cannot tell the difference between water that's been filtered with a DE filter or a cartridge filter. Sand filters, sometimes it is noticeable, but for the most part, it's very hard with a naked eye to tell the difference between a cartridge filter and the water from a cartridge filter and the water from a DE filter. But that is pretty much the number one reason that people typically have purchased or installed a DE filter in their pool. The only other reason, which I think is kind of iffy, is that sometimes people like the idea of being able to backwash the filter because they get it cleaned out, especially if you have a pool that has a lot of vegetation and there's a lot of dust around it. You get a lot of phosphates in your filter. And when you have a cartridge filter, it can be a pain with that much phosphates to have to clean it like every 3 months. Whereas with a DE filter, you can backwash it, or a sand filter, you can backwash it out as frequently as you really want, and that cleans it out a little better. So, but again, that is kind of a non-issue as far as I'm concerned, because there are sand filters, and like I said, with a new medium that goes into a sand filter, it could change the whole game. Okay, so those are the two pros, and again, the big one is the how well the filter filters out the smallest particles. Now, the cons, this is very important, okay? Because to me, as far as I'm concerned, the first two cons are enough to make me go, I don't care how well or how efficient it filters out particles. These are two reasons that I would never have a DE filter. Number one, DE is toxic to humans. Pool grade DE is toxic to humans. It is made out of crystalline silica, and it is toxic. If you ingest it, it's not good for you, and it could hurt you. So that's one reason. Another reason is it is also unhealthy. If you inhale it, it can cause respiratory issues, including cancer. And if you don't believe me, we're going to go right now to the label of one of my DE bags, and you can read for yourself with me what it says. On the bottom here, I want you to notice this, California Proposition 65. This product can expose you to crystalline silica, which is known to the state of California to cause cancer. And there's information you can look up on their website. So I wanted to show you this product. This is actually one that I have recommended before in a previous video. And if you are a DE filter user, I'll put a link below this video in the description so you can check it out, the video on that. This is a low dust DE filter powder. It's been very hard to get. It's made by a company called Sealapool, and it is low dust. So at least if you're going to have a DE filter, it's low dust, so there's less powder floating around the air, so there's less chance of you inhaling it, but it's still a very good chance that that could happen. And again, the warnings are the same. If you look at it, it talks about avoid breathing it. Dust may cause eye and respiratory irritation. This product contains crystalline silica. Prolonged inhalation or excessive concentration of crystalline silica may cause lung damage, increase the risk of lung cancer. You notice that. Talks about first aid. So the warnings are the same with this product, but I'm just putting this up there for you to see that if you can find this product, and it has been very hard to get, they've been out of it for the longest time, and my supplier just got a hold of some more of it. If you're going to have a DE filter, at least try to get something that's low dust. But again, it doesn't matter what kind, it's still hazardous and toxic to a human being. So just based on those two reasons, that it is toxic to humans and that it is also can cause respiratory issues, that's enough for me to say that's not worth the health risks of having a DE filter. Especially because when you backwash and recharge a filter, there's no way around it. You're going to get some of that DE powder dust in your nostrils or inhale it a little bit, especially if it's breezy. I know that I have had subscribers. I actually had 2 subscribers at the beginning of when I started my channel that messaged me and said that they worked in a plant that made the pool grade DE, and they had to wear hazmat suits and full respirators the whole time they were there because of the health risk of producing the product. So again, do you really want that around your pool? Another reason that I don't care for the DE, and again, another con, a negative, is that DE powder is sharp. And if that gets in your eyes, it will actually cut the lens of your eye or the inside of your eyelid, which is irritating as all get up. And I've had that happen before, and you got for about 2 weeks, you feel like you've got this stick in your eye, and that's not very comfortable at all. So that's another reason or another negative to a DE filter. Another negative to the DE filter is it does need to be backwashed. There are some places that have drought issues, and they're considering trying to ban filters that have to be backwashed. I hope they don't, because I do like the idea of being able to backwash a filter for the reason I stated in one of the pros about having a DE filter, and a sand filter, because you can backwash out the phosphates more frequently if you need to. But unfortunately, the DE filter is the worst of both worlds. Not only do you have to backwash and recharge a DE filter with potentially hazardous DE, you also, on occasion, usually every 8 to 12 months, you have to pull the filter apart, the DE filter, and you have to clean the grids with a sprayer or a hose nozzle and everything. So you end up having to take your filter apart, kind of like a cartridge filter, and spraying off the grids anyway. And then hopefully you can check your grids for any weaknesses in the grids or any tears and replace those ASAP. Which brings me to another negative. If you own a DE filter for any period of time, it's just a matter of time before you have a torn grid or more, in which case the only way to know that's happening is when you backwash and recharge your filter, you will see DE blowing back into your pool. Now you've got that toxic and hazardous DE powder floating around in your pool that until you get those grids replaced and fixed and then get the pool adequately vacuumed out and cleaned out, you've got all that DE, residual DE, floating around in your pool for your friends, yourself, and your loved ones to swim in. And that's not good for you either. So again, those are a lot of negatives for having a DE filter. Most of those, in fact, the only 2 in the beginning are enough for me to say, no way, don't want one. So remember I said more on the sand filter medium later on in this video? Well, now's the time, okay? Up until about the last few years, 2-3 years, okay, the DE filter did filter out the smallest particles, like 3 to 5 microns, as I said earlier. But then the sand filters being the worst. And I was never a fan of sand filters until I found out about this particular sand replacement for sand filters, okay? There's a product out there called Dr. Dryden's Activate. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description below this video, so check that out. But according to their statistics, it is basically crushed glass. It's in 2 grades. There's a coarse and then there's a finer. And you put the coarse in first and you put the fine in afterwards. It replaces the sand in a sand filter, and it has a larger surface area. And according to all the different research and studies, it filters as small as 3 to 5 microns. That's as good as a DE filter. In some research that I've read, it says it can filter up to 1 micron. I'm not sure I believe that one. But even if it's 3 to 5 microns, that's as good as a DE filter without any of the negatives of diatomaceous earth, okay? The other thing I like about the Glass Activate is that once you put it in your filter, it's guaranteed for the life of that sand filter. So most sand filters, you have to replace the sand about every 3 years, and at a cost typically for a standard size play pool about $300 to $350 to replace it each time. Now the Dr. Dryden's Activate, and I'm getting no money for recommending this, I just have a couple clients that have it and it's fantastic and I swear by it now. The only thing about it is it costs about 3 times the cost of regular sand. But like I said, you put it in your filter one time, you never have to change that media out again. And again, like I said, it filters as good, if not better, than DE without the health risks of diatomaceous earth powder. One more thing when it comes to the DE filter compared to a sand filter with the Activate glass media in there. DE filters typically have to be backwashed every 4 to 6 weeks in the peak season and every maybe 6 to 8 weeks in the off season. Sand filters with regular sand typically have to be backwashed every 1 to 3 weeks in the peak season and every 3 to 5 weeks in the off season. So there's more frequency that you have to backwash a sand filter with sand. With the Activate, because it's got a larger surface area than sand, the frequency of having to backwash the sand filter with the Activate in it is the same as a DE filter. So you're not having to backwash it any more than a DE filter, and you're not having to recharge it. You backwash it for 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, get all the dirt and debris out of there, and you're back in business one time, boom, no change in the sand, no replacing, no recharging it. So there you go. So folks, that is my video on DE filters and why you should not have one in your pool. Of course, the choice is always yours, but I hope this has gave you some food for thought and some information that will help you make a decision, an informed decision, on whether or not you want to risk the health of your swimmers and yourself in your pool with a product like diatomaceous earth. Again, especially now that there is an option for sand filters, that Dr. Dryden's Activate, which replaces the sand in a sand filter for the life of the filter and filters as good as DE without all the risk. So I hope it made sense. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below this video, or you can email me directly. My email address, as always, will come across the bottom of this screen right here. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Once again, kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Do check out that website for Dr. Dryden's Activate and do the research yourself, and you'll see that it is quite the product, and I'm very impressed with it. It literally has changed my mind about sand filters, period, just because of that product. So again, thanks again for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to check out poolschooler.com. And until we meet again, remember, have fun, be safe, and always watch those kids and elderly folk and pets around water. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.